Morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another CustomTools webinar series episode. In this webinar, I'm going to present our latest version of SOLIDWORKS with Odoo integration in practice. Some practical things before we jump into presentation. Feel free to utilize the chat box located in the GoToWebinar panel to share your queries or thoughts. We have set aside some time after the session for any extra questions you might have. So feel free to dive into the presentation without worrying about missing out. And by the way, this webinar should wrap up in about 35 minutes. Please note that this webinar is also being recorded and you will be able to watch it later on at your own convenience. We will send out the recording to all registered participants after the session, and the link will be also available on our website. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Tero Salonen and I am the Product Director at ATR Soft. I have been with ATR Soft since 2000, starting as a software engineer, then working as a CustomTools product manager, and now serving as product director. With over 20 years of hands-on experience in SOLIDWORKS, CAD, and PDM, I am responsible for our product business. Here is what I'll be covering in today's session. So first I wanna discuss and tell a little bit about integrations in general as a background information. Then I will share our history, especially with Odoo integrations and what is characteristics for those integrations. Then I want to highlight some things that you should be aware of and carefully consider when implementing or considering to implement an integration. And after that, I will show you a live demo how our latest integration works between SOLIDWORKS and Odoo without forgetting PDM. Then it's time to wrap up with few important key takeaways before we go to questions and answers. And I want to also take a moment to advertise our next upcoming webinar in December. But without further talks, let's jump into today's presentation. So when we talk about integrations, what that means in practice. So in practice, it means that there are two or more separate systems holding their own data, working independently, but there are some information that is useful to share between the systems. So we want to connect the systems in a way or another so that they can efficiently and error-free share the information. And the purpose for that is that by doing so, we avoid manual work and it's then also less error-prone. So typically in a companies, there are many different data systems that are needed to run the company. For instance, some are used for invoicing, some are for sales, customer management, some are perhaps used in the manufacturing, some are used in design, and so on. There are also many different ways how the integration can be implemented. So traditionally, and also how CustomTools integrations are working, they are point-to-point integrations where two different systems are exchanging the information, as the term suggests. So then the integration connects system A with system B, and that can be bidirectional. In bigger companies, where there are typically more different systems, it becomes much more difficult to manage if there are many of point-to-point integrations. So then it's worthwhile to consider centralized integration platform that is working kind of as a hub. So different systems are all connected to same hub, and you kind of send a message with an address that, for instance, from CAD system, you want to send the engineering BOM to integration hub and tell that send this to ERP system and PLM system for further process. So instead of having two different point-to-point integrations, there is only one connection from design department. Then maybe the most modern way of doing the integrations are integrations as microservices. So compared to the previous model, when we have kind of a huge integration engine, which typically is nowadays iPaaS system, so integration platform as a service, taking care of all the integrations, it means that it may be difficult to maintain from that perspective. If you want to update, or if that breaks, then basically everything can break at one go. But if using microservices, those are independent from each other and are responsible of some type of data. So for instance, one microservice can be used to exchange customer information. One can be used to exchange item information and so on. And as those are working independently, you can maintain or upgrade one without affecting other microservices. And typically, it's also really easy to scale up if needs are bigger or demands are bigger in the future. So more data, for instance, so you can just scale them quite easily. Also, nowadays, it's more and more important that you can integrate on-premise systems with cloud systems. For instance, regarding today's topic, SOLIDWORKS is a system that is typically run on-premise, whereas Odoo is typically used in a cloud. So then we need a way how on-premise systems are exchanging information with cloud infrastructure. Regarding Odoo integration and history at ATR Soft, traditionally we have done all the integrations using CustomTools platform, and in early days all integrations were implemented as individual projects. Of course, when there were same systems, we could reuse knowledge and some code and so on. And actually, we did our first experiments with Odoo, which was back then Open ERP, already over 15 years ago. But actually, the first customer went into production 2018. So at that time, we started to see that Odoo is becoming more and more popular. I think the first experiments were done because it was interesting, because it was an open source code and new system. So it was also something that was easy to study. Then we started to get more customers using the integration and or requirements. So we decided to productize the integration, meaning that certain basic functionality, such as all the error handling, logins, basic communication, are always made with product itself. It makes it much more easier to maintain and provide updates. And that was introduced in CustomTools 2019 Service Pack 2. Now, last summer or just before the summer in May, we released version 2 from Odoo integration. Of course, we have released with CustomTools every year a new version, but now we basically re-implemented the whole integration based on learnings from projects we have implemented. So it's now much more convenient to implement, and there are more features that are typically required out of the box. And there is quite clear upgrade path also from original integration unless you have really heavily customized it. And we are not planning to stop developing the integration, but there are a lot of interesting things coming in a roadmap. Now, for instance, Odoo is renewing their API for the next 20 version. So we are actually at the moment working on to adapt our integration to communicate with the new API. We have also plans to support BOM operations and engineering change orders, or the change process in general that comes with PLM module. Currently, we have Odoo customers using the integration pretty much all over the world. Currently, we have over 50 customers globally having the integration in production use. We are really closely cooperating with Odoo partners across the world, and also with Odoo we cooperate a lot in order to know the best practices to communicate with the Odoo. And in the past 2 years, you have had also opportunity to meet us at Odoo Experience, and next fall we are also back again there in Brussels. So that's also a great place to meet our customers and partners and learn new things. Then briefly about integration features that we have. So it works with all different versions of Odoo, so it doesn't matter whether you are running Odoo on-premise, cloud, or Odoo SH. Also, the community version is supported as long as you have JSON RPC model enabled to communicate with Odoo. It solely works on client side in SolidWorks, so there are absolutely zero requirements that you need to customize Odoo. So you don't need to install any custom-made module or so, but just the Odoo with JSON RPC are sufficient. The same integration what we provide works in SolidWorks and in SolidWorks PDM Professional if you are using, but the PDM is by any means required, so it's just fine to use SolidWorks only. When we connect with Odoo, we read the data models that are there. So in case you have customize your Odoo by your own custom fields. You can also integrate with them without any headache. All the data mappings are done in UI. So whether you are connecting with MRP module to export bombs and products, or whether you have some your own model where you need to either retrieve or push data, that's not a problem, but you can define them just by configuring them in user interface. The integration is also bi-directional. So traditionally we export products and engineering bill of material along with manufacturing documents and related information, but you can also update some information from Odoo to SolidWorks. You can search for existing products, or we can fill the for instance, the drop-down list where you enter the data from Odoo. So then there is only one place to maintain, for instance, your product unit of measured or product categories, suppliers, etc. We can also update existing data in a controlled way. So if you are re-exporting your bill of material, we map it with the existing BOM, and the designer can choose how to update, so what information is and should be kept like more recent. We communicate real time with Odoo, so there isn't any intermediate files, for instance, that we produce and you need to import, but it's a real-time integration in both directions, so you see what is happening real-time and get immediate feedback when integration has completed all the tasks. And although we always recommend to avoid unnecessary customizations, but through official CustomTools API you can customize the integration per your specific requirements without need to customize the product itself. What you should carefully consider when making the integration is existing data. So in ideal situation, you could make the integration already when implementing the Odoo, but if we are bringing the integration to existing system where you have already used SolidWorks and Odoo, it may be that it's hard to combine the data, so they are not synchronized and not matching well, or there are some information that is missing at SolidWorks side, or could be wrong as well. So then we need to take that into consideration when exporting the data. Of course, you need to consider your way of working. There are really different ways of making design. For instance, when you design in SolidWorks, you can end up in the same result by doing it really differently. So there can be always something that is characteristic to your company only, that is something that you are used to work with, and may consider that this is the way how everyone is working, but it can be still really unique for you, and then it needs to be considered when thinking of integration. Then it's always a question, who is the data master, at least in bidirectional integration, so that there is not a race condition that same information is updated in both systems. Then, as I already mentioned, if you need to customize something, Odoo is really flexible and you can really heavily customize that. If there are customizations at Odoo side, it needs to be verified that also when data is entered through integration, that those customizations are considering that and are working in a similar way than entering data in a UI. Then over the time, things are changing, and you need to also think how support and maintenance are working. As our integration is productized, we provide subscription and support service, and we guarantee that the latest version of the integration is always compatible with the latest version of SOLIDWORKS and Odoo. But that is something what is really important thing as well. So it's not only one-time project, but needs to be considered in the future as well. And as companies and working methods are developing, that sometimes also requires evolving the integration. So when you implement the integration that is easy to maintain and further develop, then it's also lower cost to develop it further on based on your needs. So let's then look at the real world example how SOLIDWORKS and Odoo is working in practice together and what kind of information you can share between two different systems. I'm going to use the latest official release of CustomTools being 2025 SP1 along with SOLIDWORKS 2025 latest service pack SP5, and the Odoo version in question is cloud version 18.0. So let's see through practical example how the integration works. Let's start by creating a new part in SOLIDWORKS, and in this example I use a ready-made part that we don't need to waste time on designing anything. So let's take a look at the properties that is typically configured by customer. So there are no two customers having exactly same set of information, but it solely depends on what you really need there. So when we create a new product, we check like the default project there what we want to use. So we can use the demo paths in this case, so it defines some basic settings like default values and save location, how to name file, etc. We could search for existing item in Odoo. So if we clear the search condition and search, for instance, for plate, and as you can see, CustomTools remembers recent search conditions, so you don't have to retype everything every time you search something, and it returns these from Odoo product database. So if we go to Odoo and search for plate, we should have the exactly same listing in here. And I could just select a desired row in here and double click or click the link to bring all the values here, populate my linked fields. So if I then use this in my BOM, Odoo can identify the correct product, but let's not do that, but instead close this, and we just take the new available number from the sequence. I could have many different sequences, but we take it from there, and Then we define the description. We could use the just some free text or search it from predefined dictionary. But in this case, this is a round bar where we have predefined formula how to compose the description. So we can just click the dimension fields and then the suggested dimensions like a diameter and length, and custom tools will automatically generate a standard description for us. The category list and the unit of measure, they both are coming directly from Odoo. So if we go back to Odoo and create a new product in here, we can see the category, for instance, here. So this list is exactly the same. So you only maintain the list in one place, and custom tools automatically retrieves the content of defined list to SolidWorks. Let's cancel this one and go back in here. For the inventory purposes, we define that this is something that we manufacture. I will get back to spare part option later on. Then we can define something that is characteristic to model itself. So for instance, the material it's made from. So this integrates with SolidWorks material selection, as well the RAL color. So raspberry red sounds perfect color in this case. And here we could, for the production use, we could define how, or like override what is the quantity in BOM when using this one if it's not 1. So for instance, we could give the material quantity in here to track the warehouse, like how many meters we consume this from there. So this could be also 175, but let's leave it empty as we want to count this as pieces. And we could also define here BOM for this part, even though in SolidWorks it doesn't have any BOM, but we will get back to that also later on. We approve the changes, so then the material is automatically applied, as well the color, and this is saved with correct name in predefined location, so I didn't need to browse for correct or desired folder. Let's make a drawing also from here to demonstrate exporting documents, and we can just have it in here, and let's add the isometric view here as well for the reference, like that. And by hitting the save button, custom tools will automatically save this also in a predefined location, like that. We can close this for now. And now if we are ready with our design, we can export this to Odoo. And as you saw, I have multiple options how to export. In this case, I want to export the production BOM. If we make this a little bit wider, we can see that here are all the mappings that I have defined, and we have one drawing made from this part, and this is new. So it means that the product doesn't exist yet in Odoo, and it doesn't have BOM either. We also verify all the values here, like for instance, what is compulsory, restriction length, etc. So we can build really different rules. It may be also that if the category is manufacturing, then we need to define something else. So it's up to you how you want to qualify your data. So if there are any errors, you are not able to export before fixing the errors or excluding the row having errors. Let's click the export, and in the background, CustomTools will process the drawing as I have defined that I want to export the PDF from the drawing for the manufacturing purposes. And now we can see that the product is okay. Number is ending with 10. So if we go to Odoo and search for 10, we can see from here that the category is correct, unit is correct, there is a description, we have the preview, in inventory we see the weight, and for operations we see that this is product to manufacturer. We have also one document in here, and if we click the preview we can see that this is the document we just created in SolidWorks. So we can just close this one and go back to product, and let's say that we want to update some information in here and take it back to SolidWorks. So for instance, the cost, as this is defined, that can be imported in SolidWorks. So someone in purchasing departments knows that this product costs 750. Make sure that it's saved. And now if we go back to SolidWorks and select to import values, CustomTools will refresh the view, and we see that the cost has been updated. It's identified by a violet background color, and there aren't any changes made in CAD, so we can just accept the changes. And now it's up to date again, and if we go to SolidWorks and open the properties here, we can see that the read-only field in UI is now updated to 750. So that this is the way you can also pull values from Odoo automatically to SolidWorks to keep your information synchronized. So what about if we want to export a BOM? For that purpose, I have here a subwoofer assembly. Let's expand this and go to export, and again production. Yes, we can save. And now, as we have this in PDM vault and we have modifications, CustomTools warns about that, but we can just ignore in this case. And after CustomTools has computed the BOM, we can verify that everything is valid and there are no errors, so no red, which is good. We have two drawings made, so one part drawing and then the assembly drawing, And someone may wonder, like we have here under the speaker element some subcomponents in SolidWorks because how it's designed, but I have defined a rule that if a component is purchased, like the category in here, we ignore all the children because we buy this speaker as one item, so we don't really care what there is under, and we don't want to push that information to Odoo. Everything here is new, and in this case we see also that there is a BOM that doesn't exist yet in Odoo, and same applies to BOM lines, obviously, because there is no BOM, there can't be BOM lines neither. So I think we are good to go. Just hit the export, and once again CustomTools will translate the drawings in the background. We could also export, for instance, DXF files from sheet metal files for laser cutting, or step files, or if you need some other file format, for instance 3D printing. We support all, I think, close to 30 different file formats in SolidWorks. So whatever you need in Odoo, you can translate them in SolidWorks with CustomTools automatically, and then upload up-to-date documents to Odoo to use them in downstream processes like purchasing or manufacturing. So export was successful. Everything is okay in here. And if we just a little bit make this wider to see the number in here, and go to Odoo, search for the products. So it was ending 084. And if we open this one, once again we see the preview, we see the document, and this time we also see bill of material. So we have here now the production, BOM, and all the listing in here. So we see the components, and in this case this was a really simple example, so there was only one of each item included in BOM. So let's make a modification. So if I want to add here a line, so let's say that we need what we would need. We need a box here. So how we back this like that, and we need one of them, and let's save. And at the same time, let's make a modification in here. So we could also modify the main assembly in here so that we add so-called virtual item. So if I go in here, and we had these BOM lines in here, let's say that we need a label. Here we can search for label, like in here, and let's see, do I have any here? Subwoofer label, double click, we need one of those. Okay, so now I have one additional line here. I won't model that, but I know that there needs to be a label whenever we manufacture this item. So let's close this and just save it and go back in here and export to production. And now when CustomTools is computing the BOM, it will identify that we have some changes in our BOM, and actually in both SolidWorks and in Odoo. So let's see how it will appear here in my export view once CustomTools is ready with computing the BOM. So now we see that here we have the subwoofer label under here, and it's a new BOM line. And we see also that there is one item, the cartoon box, that doesn't exist in my CAD BOM. So per my settings, by default, CustomTools would delete this in order to synchronize the BOM. But we know that this should be here and is added there on attention. So we select not to remove this from Odoo when exporting, and after clicking the export, CustomTools won't create any PDFs from the drawings because they were up to date. I could have checked them to force CustomTools to generate the file, but in this case there was no need for that. And in here we should have updated BOM, where we have also label. Okay, and then let's see the another export profile. So I have the spare part profile. So for my subwoofer, I could also create a spare part BOM. So you may still remember that in CustomTools properties there was a checkbox that you can click to identify spare parts. In this case, the only spare part that I have is the speaker element that someone can purchase as a spare part. And the products are okay because we already exported them, but this spare part BOM with BOM line doesn't exist yet. So if we export and it's ready, we can close this one. If we go to Odoo and we see the products and we search for the subwoofer, we see now that there is actually two bill of materials, one for the production and one for the spare parts, and the spare part BOM only contains the the speaker element. Okay, what else? This same integration also works in PDM context. So if you are running SolidWorks PDM, let's close this in here that we don't interfere. So you don't need to have SolidWorks installed, but if you have SolidWorks PDM Professional, you can also export BOM on demand by selecting desired assembly in Vault View and just in the right click menu to choose to export to Odoo, or then in workflow state transitions we can define that when we change the state, the export happens automatically. So let's say that something is approved, then the BOM is automatically also transferred to Odoo, and when that is done in PDM context, all the possible file conversions are run by using PDM or by utilizing PDM tasks. So then the file conversion won't consume computing time on designer's computer, so you don't have to wait for file conversions to take place. And now we see here the same, exactly the same POM, and once again we wouldn't export this, so, or we don't want to remove that, so we click that, and otherwise all is good. So actually nothing is happening if I now export this. So that was everything that I wanted to show in a live demo. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. To wrap up, I'd like to highlight the key points we have covered in this presentation. So having a integration, like true integration between two systems, which is working real time, can be a real game changer because it reduces errors. It's a lot faster to use, and you can then, in most cases, do separate processes in parallel. So before the design is even finished yet, you can export your preliminary POM to Odoo and, for instance, purchase the buy parts that have a long delivery time, or you can start manufacturing some components that takes longer to make, and so on. So altogether that will cut the lead time and makes you more competent. Then I can't emphasize too much the importance of careful planning. So time invested before the integration that carefully planned will have quick return on investment later on, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel or make the same things over and over again if not everything is considered in the first place. So remember to carefully plan beforehand. Then I hear many times questions that how the typical integration works. Well, there are some principles that we can share that are common to many integrations, but many companies, especially with a long history, have developed their own way of working, which are characteristic only for them. And there are typically reasons behind how working like that, and it's not always easy to change the way of working. That's why we try to adapt with custom tools and integration to the way customer is working. So there isn't really a standard way of doing things. That is also good to keep in mind. Then you should always carefully consider if customizations are required, because that may cause later on troubles when upgrading your systems, and that applies to all systems in general. So good principle is to start small and grow over time, and not try to implement each and every feature in the first place. So what is common in product development to have a so-called minimum viable product is also good principle when making the integrations, and then perhaps iterate over time and come with more complete solution. That concludes today's presentation, and I hope you learned some new things in audience. Now I invite you to ask any questions you may have. We are here to provide clarification address any concerns, or provide additional information based on what I have covered today. So please feel free to type your questions in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. As we wrap up, I'd like to remind you that the recording of this session will be available for you to review at your convenience. We are excited to announce our next webinar, which will be held on December 11th. The topic will be What's New in CustomTools 2026, where we walk you through the enhancements and new features in the upcoming CustomTools major release. You won't want to miss it. Before that, we already have a webinar next Tuesday together with Oscar Software and our joint customer. We will showcase the benefits of integrating CustomTools with Oscar Pro ERP system. That webinar will be held in Finnish. Keep an eye on your email for further details and registration information. Thank you once again for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Have a great day. Thank you.